Si dice che non votare è brutto, non è buono, si deve votare e si deve scegliere il male minore. Chi è il male minore?
So voting for the lesser of two evils is not the same as actually voting for an evil. Welcome to the Father Leo Show, where I am dishing out faith, culture, and commentary. And in this brevicode, we're actually going to listen to the words directly of the Holy Father in who to choose, the lesser of two equals. And then we're actually going to look at what a theologian says would be the choice of who are the two evils. But before we jump into this, make sure that you like, subscribe, share, and comment so that we can kind of surpass all the limitations and the algorithms that truly suppress Catholic content. And then also, please help us out by going to patreon.com/thefatherleo show, and you can be a member of that at any level. But if you do support us with a gift each month, then you get access to some awesome content, but also some pretty fun perks. So we're going to just jump right into it so that you can make a good choice, the lesser of two evils, as we are hearing it to be. Do we choose Kamala Harris and her party of joy? Or do we choose Donald Trump so that we could make America great again? The choice is yours, but let's talk about it. So what I want to do is actually play for you the words of the Holy Father, and there are translations that are here, and what I want to do is read them, and so I'm going to kind of mute his words a little bit and read the translations. And I can say that, he's speaking in Italian, the translations are accurate, and this is coming from NBC Now, and this is, again, the Holy Father as he is concluding his incredible 11-day trip to Asia, speaking to hundreds of thousands, if not even millions of people, some of whom aren't even Christian, and yet they listened attentively to him. And now he's flying back to Rome. He's on the plane, as he has done, as all popes have done. He's just taken some generic questions from the reporters, and this is what he has to say about the elections. So both are against life, whether it's the one who is chasing away migrants or the one who kills children. Both are against life. So we know he's talking about, I cannot decide, I cannot say, I'm not an American and I will not be voting there. Expelling migrants, not giving them the possibility of work, not welcoming migrants is a sin. It is grave. Today, there is a wave of migrations from Central America, and they are often treated like slaves because they are exploited. Migration is a right that is enshrined in sacred scripture. In the Old Testament, the stranger, the orphan, and the widow. Do not forget this. This is what I think about migrants. Then, on abortion. Science says that in the first month after conception, all of the organs of the human being are already there. All of them. To have an abortion, performing an abortion, is killing a human being. Whether you like that word or not, this is killing. You cannot say that the church is closed because it does not allow abortion. The church does not allow abortion because it is killing. It's an assassination. We must be clear about this. Expelling migrants, not letting them develop, not letting them have a life, is an ugly thing. It's mean. Forcing a child from the mother's womb
dal seno della mamma è un assassino,
is an assassination,
perché c'è vita.
because that life
In queste
is
cose
there.
dobbiamo parlare
On
chiaro.
these things we must speak
No,
clearly.
però, niente
No,
ma
but,
però.
or however,
Ambe
both
cose
things are
sono
clear.
chiare.
The orphan, the
L'orfano,
stranger, the
lo
widow.
straniero e la vedova.
Do not forget this.
Non dimenticare quello. In genere
Generally,
si
it
dice
is
che
said that
non
not
votare
voting
è
is
brutto,
bad. It is not
non è
good.
buono. Si deve
You
votare
must vote.
e si deve
You must
scegliere
choose the
il
lesser
male
evil.
minore. Chi è il male
Who is the
minore?
lesser evil?
Quella signora
The
o
lady
quel signore?
or that gentleman?
Non so,
I don't know.
ognuno in coscienza
Everyone in conscience
pensi
has to
e
think
faccia
about
questo.
this and to do this. That's what the Holy Father says. He is incredibly focused on making sure that there is justice. And in his mind, justice is all about treating people with dignity. Now, this is the interesting part. Robert Marshall wrote on August 27, 24, in Catholic Culture, Trump, the lesser of two evils, is a moral choice. Now, please don't think that I am advocating to vote for Trump. I'm not. But I'm just reading the article because this is coming from a moral theologian. And I encourage you, I'll make sure that the link is in the bio, that you read this article because it's actually taking a look from a moral theological point of view. The Pope tells us, choose the lesser of two evils. Kamala Harris versus Donald Trump. We know that both of these candidates are hardly saints. Hardly. I have criticisms on both of them. In Trump's previous life, just as a businessman, he was exactly what a rich businessman from New York lived as. I think that his children are very good examples of the kind of man he wanted to be. They are very upright people. Kamala Harris had a very sordid life prior to being a public servant. And as a prosecutor and as an official for California, I completely 1,000,000,000% disagree with everything she stands for. That's just a fact. That's my personal experience. I don't want more of what she did in California, because if you take a look at California, I love the state of California and I know they're amazing people, but I'm in California quite a bit and it's just sad what's happening there. So I disagree with that. So you have these people who are in very prominent positions and we're going to be voting for one or the other. None of them, like I said, are saints. It is interesting that there has now been a second attempt on President Trump's life. And why? Because people accuse him of being Hitler. And that cannot be farther from the truth. Just because Kamala's party accuses Donald Trump of being Hitler doesn't make it so. You have to actually look at the facts. And this particular Catholic Culture by Robert Taylor Marshall writes how this is consistent with what the Holy Father is saying, that you have to choose the lesser of two evils, and you must choose. To not vote is actually irresponsible and not helpful to our Catholic faith. First off, I just want to say that none of these candidates represent the Catholic faith in its fullness. One, I think, represents it more than the other. But again, I'm not telling you how to vote. I'm just looking at what the Holy Father said and using this Catholic Culture article to try to understand how to apply this precept of what is a lesser of two evil. And so both Harris and Walz, well, first of all, Trump is certainly not the pro-life candidate he seemed to be in previous elections. We heard about the in vitro fertilizations and also hearing about what he wants to say in regards to abortion. Yes, under his administration, Roe versus Wade was essentially overturned because, not his administration, but because of the justices that he did pick in the Supreme Court. And all they were trying to do was follow the Constitution. And so there are some very pro-life things that President Trump stands for. But in this case, if we were to apply what the Holy Father is saying, he talks about treating migrants with dignity, and expelling them or treating them like slaves is an evil thing. And you know what? The Holy Father is right. But I will have to say that if you were to take a look at the migration crisis that's happening around the world, but especially in America, it is orchestrated by evil people. The George Soroses and the World Economic Forums, these are organizations that I wouldn't trust with anybody, even my worst enemy. I don't think George Soros or the World Economic Forum represent the Catholic Church in any way, shape, and form. And I think that they are, to a degree, no, we know that they are responsible for the organized chaos that is happening at our borders. And I can honestly say this too, that under President Obama, that was the record number of deportations that happened in the United States migration issue. President Obama put up the cages. President Obama had very strict laws, and he deported more people than President Trump did. So, if we were to take a look at what the Holy Father said, President Obama is committing great evil. I'm just going by what the Holy Father says. The other issue is that the migration crisis needs the distinction between legal versus illegal immigration. And I can speak to this on a level of authority because we, my family, are migrants. And we have been welcomed in this country beautifully. And I'm now an American citizen, but guess what? Me and my family went through an incredibly long process in order to become American citizens. And so the Holy Father seemed to focus more on this evil because the Holy Father, being a South American, seeing that people are treated without great dignity, they are already alive and present in our very faces, we can almost feel more sympathy because they are right there, versus what he called a child who would be taken from the mother's womb, forced out of the mother's womb. And he said it, like the word or not, it is murder, it is killing, it is an assassination. In my opinion, in my humble moral theologian basic opinion, that is a greater evil. Now, some will say that Harris and Walz doesn't want to commit abortions. They just want people to have the right to that abortion. But when you're encouraging a promiscuous life, which the world does, and to know that abortions aren't even necessary, they're done just out of just personal choice, there's something really insidious about the mentality of just giving women this right to choose. Besides, women already have the right to choose contraception, which again, the Catholic Church is against that too. But people who don't believe in the Catholic Church, you can choose that. Or you can choose to not engage in acts that will lead to creating a life in you. That is the best choice ever. So I just see these as not moral equivalents. They are not moral equivalents. The Holy Father wants to say that because he wants to treat people with dignity, but he's not made the distinction between legal versus illegal immigration and killing a completely innocent unborn child. That can't be more grave. I mean, excuse me, that can't be less evil. No, that's the most evil thing you can do. Just killing the life of an innocent baby, oftentimes, and people are going to say, what about in the cases of rape and incest? Well, there are already laws that allow that thing. And again, President Trump isn't the most pro-life candidate in that regard. But I can tell you that why would you want to kill that baby who didn't do the rape or the incest? And why aren't people actually talking about greater punishment for the crimes of rape and incest? Because I can tell you that many illegal immigrants who have broken the law have caused rape and are hurting people. And it seems like they're getting away with almost murder. So this mentality is unfairly putting these two things as moral equivalents, and they're not, because of the lack of distinction between illegal versus legal migration and this idea of just abortion on demand. It's both are terrible, one is worse. And let's just call it, that's just what it is. Both are terrible, one is worse, and that is abortion. And promoting it, encouraging it, almost celebrating it, there's something seriously wrong about that. All right, so anyway, back to this article by Robert Marshall. He says, Harris and Walls are called progressives, social democrats, socialists, fellow travelers, radicals, liberals, leftists. But in effect, they are really much like Marxists who tolerate no dissent. And that is what I've experienced. It's like, we just know that there are people who are being persecuted because you disagree with them. People now consider calling someone by a different pronoun hate speech. This is the stuff that Harris and Walls are trying to promote. It is Marxism, who tolerate no dissent. And then there is a section here about reproductive rights, reproductive ethics, and the right to life. And then there is also a section about freedom of speech and also a freedom of religion and conscience. Then there's the idea of the Second Amendment. And, again, Harris and Walls claim that they want to protect the Second Amendment, yet that is very inconsistent about their previous statements. And then, knowing that former President Trump, has now had a second attempt on his life, you would think that he's more against guns. But he's not. He's all about protecting the Second Amendment for the historical reasons as well as for ethical reasons, in order to protect us from a military that can be weaponized against its citizens. And we see that happen time and again in other countries. So these are the areas that can determine the lesser of two evils. One, again, the whole pro-life reproductive ethics. Secondly, let's look at who wants to limit speech. Which party wants to limit speech? I mean, with X, formerly known as Twitter, we also see how there is great evidence that the news wants to create less opportunities for Harris and Walls to talk off the cuff. They are speaking from a more staged, written out context. And people who kind of speak out against them, they're oftentimes muted and silenced by the social media platform. So limiting the freedom of speech, that's a huge idea. That's a huge thing that we need to consider. Freedom of religion and conscience. So as Attorney General, Harris filed a brief asserting that Hobby Lobby owners had no religious liberty or conscious rights and should be compelled to supply abortion drugs to employees. Senator Kamala Harris and Mazie Hirono of Hawaii opposed President Trump's judicial nominees, Brian Buescher, Paul Matey, and Philip Phipps, claiming they could not be impartial because they belonged to the Knights of Columbus, which is hardly a hate group, but they say opposes abortion and same-sex marriage. And Hirano actually said that this is a religious test that violates Article 6, Clause 3. Kamala Harris introduced the Do No Harm Acts to stop churches from relying on Religious Freedom Restoration Act, which the Supreme Court has ruled exempts religious organizations from being required to cooperate with abortion, homosexual, and other objectionable policies. The Biden-Harris Equality Act compels Christians and Christian institutions to accept behavior condemned by Scripture or pay huge fines. It prohibits federally chartered banks from loaning money to churches and also allows up to $500,000 in fines for not celebrating same-sex marriages. Churches and schools would lose tax-exempt status and school certification unless they promoted LGBTQIA+ policies. This is the freedom of religious conscience clauses. And we've got to take this seriously because President Trump seems to want to protect religious freedoms. Kamala and Walz have demonstrated their desire to limit and to take it away. Again, I'm not telling you how to vote. I'm just giving you the facts. And some people are saying, but you're saying that. All I'm saying is the facts. And if the facts trigger you, then maybe you need to pray a little bit more. Because this is serious. This is serious stuff. And the Pope wanted to create a moral equivalency between the migrants, because that was his number one issue, and abortion. They're not on the same level. And I firmly believe that the United States does treat immigrants legally very well. And the Catholic Church has done great, amazing things to treating those who have crossed the border illegally with compassion and with care, providing all that we possibly could. And I do think that the Border Patrol police, they're not treating illegal migrants as slaves. I've actually watched them because they have the video cams, and they actually do treat them with dignity. But they can't stay in a country unless they are here for a purpose and not to take over. I mean, my gosh, you know who's crossing the borders these days? Everyone and anyone. How many from China? How many from Pakistan? They're not even from South America. We've got to be smarter about this, and we can't make them moral equivalents. And then the idea of the Second Amendment, and again, you know, in light of the school shooting, you can go to the video, the episode that I did on the Georgia school shooting, because it kind of outlines a little bit more of the Catholic Church's teaching on gun control. These are big issues, and the Holy Father makes this claim. What moral theologian is actually going to lay out the facts? In this case, we get this. So the conclusion is, and by the way, Bob Marshall, who is he? He served 26 years in the Virginia House of Delegates and was the chief House sponsor for the 2006 voter-approved Virginia Marriage Amendment and a ban on late-term abortion. He recently wrote Reclaiming the Republic, How Christians and Other Conservatives Can Win Back America, published by 10 Books. And he's co-authored Blessed Are the Barren, A Social History of Planned Parenthood by Ignatius Press. And finally, don't miss Bob's Civics Lessons for Catholics in the Catholic Culture Podcast, number 17. So these are his conclusions, not mine, his conclusions. For those who may be reluctant to vote for President Trump because he has so many obvious deficiencies, despite his previous pro-life efforts, which included appointing justices who reversed Roe versus Wade, I believe it is important to consider what Catholic exorcist Father Chad Ripperger stated when considering political candidates. And this is how he concludes. The faithful have an obligation to vote for the lesser of two evils, kind of like what the Holy Father's saying. However, that's not the same as voting for evil. This is a huge distinction. John Paul II had actually talked about it. What you're voting to is to preserve the good that would be lost if the other opponent got in. What's more evil? Or if the legislation got passed, which was actually even worse. And that was published in Breitbart on the 21st of August, 2024. So voting for the lesser of two evils is not the same as actually voting for an evil. And I honestly believe that, yes, there is a candidate that is promoting evil, truly promoting evil. Now, people are going to say, that's Trump because he's a fascist, he's a racist, he's a homophobe, and he's Hitler. Prove that and not just make the claim. I can say that the things that I'm hearing from Walls and Harris are not only confusing because it's contradictory to what they have said and have done, two, that there is almost conspiratorial collusion in trying to make this the party of joy, which oftentimes looks more of like a rock concert. And yeah, people can be happy, but what are they actually happy for? To protect the ability to kill children, to allow, without any consultation, the disfiguring of children, of adolescents who are confused about their identity. They also claim that they want to kill gay people, that Trump wants to kill gay people, when he in fact appointed the gay first Secretary of State. Public, I mean, like, this is just kind of asinine claims. And they want to attribute fascism to Trump, but actually, there was a GoFundMe page that Kamala Harris even donated to in order to free Antifa, which is a fascist group. They really should be labeled as a terrorist organization. So when you take a look at this and apply what the Holy Father says, I say to you, inform your conscience. Make sure you're paying attention to the news and what they're saying and what they're not saying. It's shameful that our news isn't being honest with us today. You have to do this on your own. You can't rely on what other people say. And Catholics, grow a spine. Grow a spine and realize that you're not voting for Jesus. You're voting for a human person who is going to help, hopefully, protect our nation and the rights, including, and above all, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness in that order. It seems that there are parties that want to flip it and say, I'm voting for what makes me happy, even if it limits your liberties and even if it kills life. Do not be confused. Make sure you vote with a properly formed conscience and not just feelings and the vibe. That can't be any more ridiculous. You don't have to be excited about it. Because again, you're not voting for someone who's going to be your moral leader. That's not the job of the executive. Not at all. The job of the executive is to execute what the Constitution allows. And there just seems to be other parties that want to limit it and call us a democracy when in fact we are a republic. That's just something that we need to pay attention to. So the Holy Father tells us what he thinks. This Robert Marshall outlined the things that would be considered evil. Father Ripperger gives us great admonition. Voting for a lesser evil is actually not voting for an evil. It's just something to think about and definitely something to pray about. I hope that this helps. Make sure you like this video, subscribe, share, comment. Let me know your thoughts. We may have a discussion about it, maybe even do a live show about this so that we can kind of get to the issues at hand, because you can actually look at one party's platform and you can actually read what their policies are. And it's not this crazy thing, this conspiratorial accusation. I can't even remember what that document is called. It's just some crazy document. Trump actually disavows it in a way. But then you look at the other person's platform and there's a big donate page to it, and then there's just some weak language. It's just very confusing. And I don't know about you, but confusion is not of God. So let's not be confused. Let's make sure we take these moral objectives very seriously. And again, I'm not telling you how to vote. I'm taking what the Holy Father says, and it is applied by these particular standards, and encouraging you to make sure that you actually vote, because it does make a difference. If anything, it tells you that you actually stand for something. Hopefully, stand against evil. God bless you. Make sure you like, subscribe, share, and comment, as well as go to our patreon.com/The Father Leo Show. Become a member there. And as always, stay hungry for God.